Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I wanted to kind of have a conversation about reparations. There's a lot of discussion about reparations. I just read an article in NBC on NBC.com where it looks like reparations is starting to become more of a mainstream media discussion, meaning white people are now talking about it. So I thought that given that we've got the attention of some of the people in mainstream, that it might be good to have a really thorough discussion about reparations. So I'm going to break some of this down for you. This is going to be a little bit of a deep dive. So for those of you that want to stick around, I hope that you will. And we're going to get started in 1 second on drboycetv.com right now.
Here we are, clan the isms, cataclysm, great. Our people out here struggling, trying to make it in this state. Everybody out here doing it, but we the ones who late. Now family, we the ones who gotta delegate. Get that money in the power, never be fake. Stick to cosign for 3. What did he say? Create jobs, support our own. Educate the same and buy back your home. Got 3 degrees, triple 10. 3 PhDs, now we on the CNN. DBTV, let's talk about negligence. Ignorance is bliss, but we can turn it to intelligence. Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see. Let's break it down here on Dr. Boyce TV. Here we are.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to drboycetv.com, the home for intelligent Black people. Today, we're going to talk about reparations. And I want to say hello to Gwen and Heru and Terrence and TSP. What's going on? And for those of you that are new to the platform, I want you to understand something. Make sure you know this. On this platform, we are Black first. We believe that Black people are capable of solving most of our own problems. I believe that Black people have the ability to make plans. We have the desire and ability and necessity to rebuild our families, rebuild our communities, and build our wealth in a healthy way. If you agree with that philosophy, then please stay. If you don't agree, if you don't want to be Black and intelligent, then please leave. It's okay. Just put a hashtag B1 in the chat if we're on the same page. B1 is our calling card. Hashtag B and the number 1. That means we're Black first. We solve our own problems first. That's really important for us to understand. So thank you, Ruth and Calvin and Stevie and Raymond. I see you. All right, so let's talk about reparations. I just read this article about reparations on NBC.com, and it got my attention because when NBCnews.com is talking about reparations, that means it's becoming more of a mainstream conversation. And the scary thing about mainstream media is that, so they have the power and ability to elevate a conversation, but they always kind of mess things up, especially when it comes to Black people stuff. They just don't do it right. Black folks struggle because we don't have good leadership. We struggle because we are having difficult problems being solved by people who, unfortunately, in many cases, can be considered to be absolute idiots. They are not qualified to solve these problems. In fact, if you recall, when Barack Obama was in office, the whole discussion during the whole Obama presidency was Black unemployment, Black unemployment, Black unemployment. And he didn't invite any employment experts into the White House that I know of. Dr. Claude Anderson, who wrote Powernomics, one of the most respected economic minds in Black history, lived right down the street from the White House. They never invited him in one time, but they invited Al Sharpton over 120 times. So no disrespect to Al Sharpton. I'm sure he can tell you how he can give you a good sermon because he's a pastor. I'm sure Al Sharpton could tell you where to get a good perm in your hair to make it nice, silky, and smooth. But I don't think Al Sharpton is the guy to be talking about pressing and important economic issues in the Black community. Now, what I want to impress upon you is the fact that they're sending a message when they do this. When someone pretends like they don't really have the ability to solve a problem, like it's just too complex, it's just too difficult, that it pretty much is them telling you they really don't want to solve the problem. Like, so when Joe Biden does an interview with Charlemagne the God, who spoke to some experts, he spoke to me and a bunch of other people about, the discussions that needed to be had. He gets very frustrated, right? He didn't like talking to Charlemagne. He didn't want to meet with Ice Cube at all because Ice Cube was consulting with Black scholars. He was consulting with Black experts. They don't want to hear from Black experts. So when that happens, what they do is they say, let's get Cardi B on the phone. Let's go talk to Cardi B. Cardi B, the lady who tells your 7-year-old daughter to sell WAP for a living and who is, teaching our kids how to grow up and become strippers. We'd rather talk to her because that's the person that we need representing the Black community. So one of the things that you have to understand about the Black Miss Leadership class is that the Black Miss Leadership class, those aren't leaders at all. These are individuals that were selected by white supremacy to lead Black people out of white supremacy. So when white supremacy is selecting the people that are supposed to lead you out of white supremacy, are they going to be successful? Yes or no? Are they going to be able to get the job done? Give me a yes or no. Are they going to be able to make progress? Give me a yes or no. Now, what is my evidence? Well, they asked me, what's your evidence, Dr. Boyce? Why are you talking crazy? You're just being mean. Well, studies show, and this is actually featured in this NBC article. Did you guys know? Let me know if you knew this. Did you know that the wealth gap between white and Black Americans has pretty much not changed in the last 40 years? Did y'all know that? Right? We have the civil rights movement. Remember Dr. King, we shall overcome, and social integration and all that conversation. If that movement was so powerful, why hasn't the wealth gap closed? I'm saying that slowly for the people in the back. Because, I talk to intelligent Black people, but you got Black folks out here that ain't that smart. You got people, white people, you got people out here that think that because you stood in the street and screamed Black Lives Matter, that somehow that's going to make a difference, right? Or you stood up and said, hands up, don't shoot, that's going to make a difference. So I'm saying this slowly because the proof is in the potato salad. If this movement were effective, then the wealth gap would have closed. Then you would see Black people's wealth going up and catching up to white folks, right? I mean, and I have to say it slow because for some reason, common sense doesn't really apply. People think that because they did something that made them feel emotionally good, that's the same as making progress. And no, that's just talk. Talk is cheap. Talk is not money. That's why they give you talk and they won't give you any cash. That's why politicians will talk all day about social integration. They will talk all day about getting white people to be nicer to you. They will talk all day about telling you that Black Lives Matter, but they will not talk about the money. And so the question you must ask is, why aren't you talking about the money? So everybody say the money. Everybody type the money in the chat, or type talk about the money in the chat. Talk about the money. I have a PhD in finance, so I'm about red fin to talk about the money. We about to talk about the money. So everybody say it in the chat. Talk about the money. Right. So when they come to you and they start talking about this social integration and we want little white boys and little white girls holding hands, I want you to say, talk about the money. Like, we want we want every child to know that they have the right to be gay if they want. They can change their gender. Yeah, I want you to say that's nice, but talk about the money. We want every immigrant from every surrounding country and planet to be able to come to the U.S. and just say thank you. That's nice, but talk about the money. Well, we want to make sure that we've changed the voter ID laws so that you can make sure you can vote for the Democrats, so you can keep the Democratic Party in power. I want you to say that's nice, but talk about the money. So and that's what I want you to do. I want you to get used to that, because that's what sometimes you have to do to let people know you're serious. Sometimes you have to get to the point where you become a one-dimensional son of a bitch, where you literally are like, yeah, I hear everything you're saying, but talk about the money. Well, we just want you to know how much that we think Black Lives Matter. That's great. That's awesome, bro. But can you talk about the money, right? Because if you don't do that, then they're going to use every stupid pet trick that they can come up with to distract you. Sleight of hand. Like abracadabra, then your money disappears and you don't know what happened because they got you looking over here when all the action, you should have been just focused over there. So that's what I want you to get in the habit of saying. When they start talking about all these other little agendas and programs and initiatives and get out the vote challenges and voter ID laws and all that, I want you to say, that's so great. That's wonderful. Thank you. But let's talk about the money. Because if you do that, then they'll understand that you're serious, right? It's just like in Goodfellas when the guy kept saying, F you, pay me, F you, pay me. Well, blah, 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 blah. No, F you, pay me, F you, pay me, right? You have to have that determination to get them to hear you, because they're not hearing you when you're saying, talk about the money, okay? So do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. Please do that. And let's read some of this article. And this is more of an involved conversation on reparations. And I wanted to do this because I'm not a guy that white people would want to have on TV. I'm not a guy. I used to be back when they thought I would play the game, but I don't play the game anymore. I'm tired of that. I need actual results. I'm into solutions. My friend Maj Toure, he calls it a solutionary. I'm a solutionary, right? So I want solutions. Also, I'm not a guy that they're going to invite into the big white university so I can sit and say a bunch of things that are going to make people feel good, because I'm a solution-based person. I'm a mathematician by training, which means that in mathematics, you can't pretend to solve a problem. You can't wave your hands and do a happy dance and have them think you solved the problem. You can't do a rope-a-dope and take them out and make them think you solved the problem. You really have to sit there and do it on the chalkboard and solve the problem. So I'm here to solve the problem. I'm here to connect the dots on why we've made very little economic progress in the last 40, 50 years, and why the reparations conversation is dangerously at risk of becoming a conversation that has nothing to do with foundational Black Americans that it was designed to support. Okay, so I'm gonna read this article. Hit the thumbs up button. Please hit that thumbs up button. Very important. So here on NBC, there's an article that says what slavery reparations from the federal government could look like. It says Black Americans have been fighting for reparations tied to slavery for generations. Here's what that fight looks like in 2021. Now, do me a favor, guys. I am, as I'm getting ready for my wedding on the 21st, I am traveling, so I do not have my microphone. I'm using my laptop mic. Can you hear me? Give me a yes in the chat. Please give me a yes to confirm that you can hear me okay, because I'm a little bit self-conscious right now about the sound, and I hope that you guys can hear me okay. All right. So here's what it says in this article. It's on NBCnews.com, and it says, after decades of work from activists pushing the issue, presidential candidates, Congress members, local governments, and private institutions have debated whether and how the federal government should issue reparations to Black Americans who are descendants of slaves. As the Biden administration promises to confront structural racism and inequality, a growing number of Democratic lawmakers have given their support to H.R. 40, a decades-old bill first introduced by Representative John Conyers, Democrat, Michigan, in 1989. The bill would create a commission to study slavery and discrimination in the United States and potential reparations proposals for restitution. In April, H.R. 40 moved out of committee for the first time, potentially setting up a floor vote on the legislation. Now, one thing I want to say here is that H.R. 40 is a bill that we should support, right? It's very important to study reparations. But here's the interesting thing about that. A study is just a study, right? A study is, and it's a delay tactic. Politicians use it all the time. They basically will say, well, let us think about it. It's like if somebody owes you money and you say, I have receipts that show that you owe me $50,000. I need you to pay me. And they say, okay, well, let me go study this invoice for about 5 years, and then maybe I'll pay you. Let me go study whether or not I owe you money, right? And that's nice, but you kind of want to say to them, okay, can you do that quickly? Can you study? How about we take 5 minutes and then after you finish studying for 5 minutes, we're not going to do 5 years or 5 months, 5 minutes, because I've already done the study. I got the receipts right here, right? There's a book called Black Labor, White Wealth. Black Labor, White Wealth. Anybody who's serious in the reparations discussion on Capitol Hill who hasn't read these books by Dr. Claude Anderson is a person who's probably not that serious about this conversation. Because in this book, Dr. Claude Anderson details in very specific terms exactly why Black people are owed reparations. He lays out in very clear terms exactly how white supremacy was laid out, specific laws with dates that where the laws were passed to oppress Black people or to control the Black labor supply. He talks about, for example, in 1804, when they had the Ohio Anti-Mobility Law that enacted Black laws that restricted the movements of Blacks. He talks about the 1667 British Plantation Act, which established codes of conduct for slaves and slaveholders, specific structural systems that created the foundation of systematic racism. He talks about the 1664 Maryland marriage law, which enacted the first anti-racial marriage statute. He talks about the 1827 Maryland Occupation Act, which prohibited Blacks from driving or owning cars, hacks, carts, or drays. He talks about the 1831, I don't know what a hack or a dray is, so y'all, I gotta be educated on that. The 1831 Indiana Mobility Law required Blacks to register in order to work and post bond. He talks about the 1717 South Carolina anti-marriage or anti-interracial marriage law. He talks about the 1740 South Carolina Consolidated Slave Act, which forbade slaves from raising or owning farm animals. The 1775 Virginia Runaway Law, which allowed sale or execution of slaves attempting to flee. So he specifically lays out very detailed documentation of what happened over the last 400 years. There ain't no reason to sit around and do a study to know that you owe us money. There's no person, no intelligent person with an IQ over maybe 30 who can see all this evidence, which could be consumed in a few days, and not conclude that Black people are not owed trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, because white supremacy at its very structure and foundation was built to be a system of codes and nexus of relationships which allowed whites to oppress Black people in a consistent way, to allow them to extract the wealth out of your community the same way you extract blood out of a pig, right? The same way you extract, a tissue from a fetus. When they do they talk about the little government shots they want to give you, right? Or the same way you might extract milk from a cow. They were milking the Black community by creating a system, a systematic white supremacy, systematic racism that allowed them to economically exploit the Black community the same way you exploit a farm animal. Do you get what I'm saying? Give me a yes or no if you understand what I'm saying, so we can move on with the conversation. All right. Now, the allblackagenda.com, by the way, is a page you can go to if you're interested in a Black agenda designed for you to make progress. It is something we created with teams of scholars that care about the Black community. It's not government-based. It's not corporate-based. It's not based on a bunch of Negroes that got put on TV. This came from the Black community, from real problem solvers. So if you want to go take a look, it's the things like the $5 a day investing plan that we talk about on this platform a lot, where I, again, as a finance PhD, I can explain to you how investing small amounts of money over a consistent basis over a long period of time can create massive family wealth that will probably exceed any amount of money that's going to be written in a reparations bill. But let's keep going. That doesn't mean we're against reparations. We're very pro-reparations here, but I don't want you waiting on a government check, just like I don't want you waiting on a government shot. And instead of waiting on the government shot, I don't judge you whether you get it or not. I would rather you take care of your health. I would rather you learn the leading causes of death of Black people and how to prevent those. I would rather you learn how to have a healthy immune system so that viruses can't attack you as easily. I would rather you learn how to deal with the epidemics of mass murder that are occurring in the Black community from unhealthy food and diabetes and strokes and heart disease and cancers that are preventable, right? So I'd rather you learn the whole picture and not just screw everything up and wait for a government shot. Same thing financially. I want your financial body to be so healthy that you're not screwing yourself over and waiting on a government check, okay? I want you to take the check. If the check comes in, I want you to take it, but I don't want you to need it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so with that being said, here's what else the article says. It says, meanwhile, the ongoing reckoning with racial injustice and the health disparities exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic have called further attention to the ways Black people have faced generations of systematic discrimination. Well, with an issue so large and complex, proponents suggest a range of ways the U.S. could engage in reparations, while opponents say the time for redress for slavery and the discrimination and that followed has passed. Let's see here. So calls for reparations for enslaved men and women and later their descendants have been made in various forms since the end of the Civil War, but these demands have never been met by the federal government. In 1865, Union Major General William T. Sherman ordered, pay attention now, listen, that land confiscated from the Confederate landowners be divided up into 40-acre portions and distributed to newly emancipated Black families. Following President Abraham Lincoln's assassination, however, the order granting 40 acres and a mule was swiftly rescinded by new President Andrew Johnson. The majority of the land was returned to white landowners. So General Sherman, God bless him. He sounds like you talk about allies, right? I don't really believe in this idea that you got these allies that you think you have. But to me, hey, if he's chopping up land in 40-acre plots and giving it to Black folks, then you my ally. If you're helping me and my family eat, then you're a real ally. You tell me that you like me, you tell me Black Lives Matter, you're not really my ally. You're just pimping me a little bit. But if you actually showing up with, and you were cutting checks and you're really actually supporting me in my effort to be independent, then I will call you an ally. So General Sherman, I would say, it sounds to me like, as far as good white folks go, so to speak, he's an ally, right? So shout out to Sherman for this. He wanted to chop up all the land from the Confederate slave owners. And he wanted to give that land out to Black people in 40-acre plots. Don't worry, Terrence Williams, you're not too late, man. You're right here, brother. I see you. And so he wanted to pass this out and give everybody 40 acres and a mule. So that means that you have land. 40 acres of land is a lot of land, right? Imagine right now, how much do you think 40 acres of land would be worth? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see if I can Google that. Let me see. Let's see. So how much would 40 acres of land cost? Oh, wow. So it's auto completed. And let's pick Texas. Hit the thumbs up button. Please hit the thumbs up button if you haven't done it yet. Okay. So let's see. 40-acre plot. How about this? How about we start with how much of it is an acre of land in Texas? So an acre of land in Texas is about $3,000, right? So let's make the math easy. So somebody do the math for me. So if an acre of land is worth $3,000 in the state of Texas, how much is 40 acres of land worth approximately right now? So let's see. So you take the 40, so 4 times 3,000, that's 12,000, add a zero, that's $120,000. So that right there is $120,000 worth of land that Black people, were given, or should have, but did not receive, right? So we can add that to the tab in terms of the money that we're owed, because they owe us a bunch of land. Land is a valuable asset. If you don't own land, you have to own something. Land is one of the realest things that you can own, and that's why they call it real estate. But I would just say that a reparations plan, one good one, could start with land ownership, access to land ownership. And this is actually going back to, in terms of what you want to look for in a reparations plan. I think that some sort of plan that gives millions of Black people the ability and the opportunity to own at least 40 acres of land through some sort of process, either giving them the land outright or allowing them to at least get an interest-free loan to buy the land, would be a great start. The thing about Black people that they don't realize is that we're actually pretty nice people. We'll let you off the hook pretty easily if you just kind of do the right thing. Like, and some Black folks go overboard. Like, they'll just forgive anything. Joe Biden will put 100,000 Black men in prison. They still call him Uncle Joe. That's the crazy thing. But they forgave your damn relative. You got a cousin that took $5 from you in 1985, and you ain't talked to him in 30 years. But yeah, you'll forgive Uncle Joe for locking up 100,000 Black men. And so when you're talking about this reparations conversation, it ain't got to be complicated. You start with land. That's massive. That's huge. And I'm going to talk more about that in a second, but I just wanted to drill into that. So it says also in this article, I'm reading this article from NBC called "What Slavery Reparations from the Federal Government Could Look Like." So they said that Sherman wanted to give Black people 40 acres and a mule. After the Civil War, formerly enslaved men and women also argued that their unpaid labor while in bondage entitled them to pensions. So they tried to get pensions. Their demands received resistance from the federal government, which accused prominent pension supporters of fraud and ignored pension bills brought up in Congress. So they did kind of what current lawmakers do. They just ignored them. They ignored them the same way they ignore you. And it's okay. Like, if they want to ignore you, that's fine. But I'm thinking maybe that means you can also ignore them, right? So my argument would be that if you ignore me, now pay attention now, if you ignore me when I talk about what matters to me, then I'm going to ignore you when you talk about what matters to you. So if you come to me and you say, hey, Boyce, we got to get out and rock the vote. We got to make sure we get the Democrats in office. I'm going to be like, well, you ignored me, so I'm going to ignore you. I didn't even hear that. Right. Or if you say, hey, Boyce, hey, we need you, Black people to come out and buy this product. We need your money. Well, you ignore me, so I'm going to ignore you. Right. So you ignore the corporations, you ignore the government officials, you ignore all the people. The people who don't pay attention to the issues that matter to you should not get your attention at all. They should get nothing from you. Absolutely nothing. You should give them the cold shoulder, give them the silent treatment, You should deal with them the way you might, the way maybe a mother might deal with her husband when he ain't acting right. You ain't getting none today. you ain't getting none of this from me, right? Or maybe a husband might do the same thing, right? So my point is on this is to say that this idea that they can ask for the world from you, but you can't even ask for the basics from them is an asymmetric, imbalanced relationship in the first place. That is a problem. That's an abusive relationship. That's not fair to you. Okay, so let's keep going. It says, as the federal government denied land and resources to formerly enslaved people, it created new pathways for land ownership for white Americans. So while they were taking land away from you, they were giving land away to them. They said the Homestead Act in 1862 granted 160-acre plots to applicants. So Black people were promised 40 acres and a mule. They didn't get that. White people were promised 160 acres if they applied for the Homestead Act. They gave that to them. That can be traced. You can go back and you can find out who was denied the 40-acre plots and who was given the 160-acre plots. And you can go back and you can say, well, some of that land shouldn't have been yours. I know that land has been in your family for 150 years, or that corporation bought it and the corporation uses this land to make money. But this land was gotten, and it was an ill-gotten gain by somebody who did something that we now define to be unethical and illegal. So we're going to go back and we're going to make things right. Moving on, it says, quote, Black families receive no assets from the federal government, while large numbers of white families receive substantial assets as a starting point for building wealth in the United States, according to William Darity, a professor of public policy at Duke University. And so it also says, Darity added that calls for reparations are a, quote, specific claim that is connected to the failure to provide ancestors of today's living descendants who were deprived of the 40-acre land grants that they were promised. Yes, I like Sandy Darity. I agree with that statement. After the war and during the Reconstruction era, Black Southerners made political, social, and economic progress, but these gains were quickly overturned. Discrimination was further entrenched through laws regulating every facet of Black life, including housing restrictions, legal segregation, and racially motivated terrorism and lynchings. So a lot of times, and this is one of the failings of the civil rights movement, when you start getting to the point where you're leaning on government policy and laws and bills to kind of provide the semblance of freedom for Black people, you got to be careful and understand that these laws can be changed. These bills can be overruled. They can replace a law with something else, right? Or they can decide which laws they're going to enforce and not enforce. So when they're getting really caught up in legislation, not that legislation doesn't matter. There's a role for the government in this, absolutely. But when you get caught up in people saying we're going to get social justice for Black people, or we're going to get, this other type of justice by, changing this law, or we're going to create this anti-discrimination law, or we're going to create this policing bill or whatever. Those things are fine. I'm not against that. But I want you to go back to the basic point we talked about earlier. You say that's nice, but let's talk about the money. So let's type in the chat, talk about the money. You go back, you say, let's talk about the, thank you for passing the police reform bill. That's great to get these cops off our back, but let's talk about the money. Thank you for telling us, that boys and girls can use the same bathroom or whatever pronouns, transgender conversations they want to have. That's fine. But thank you. But let's talk about the money, right? I think that's important because you got to keep it focused. And because if you look around and you look at the conversations that are coming out of the Biden camp, and it's really interesting. It's very sad almost. I almost feel sorry for all the Black people that were caping for Biden and the Democrats during the last election. Because if you notice, most of them are kind of backpedaling. If you notice, even Simone Sanders, remember Simone Sanders? She was the big, hefty lady who tackled somebody. Anybody, give me a yes or no if you know. Remember Simone Sanders? She was this big old lady who tackled somebody who was trying to come after Biden. Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can find the tackle. It's really great. It's an awesome image of this lady. I swear the Cowboys really need her for their defensive line because she could actually probably take down some dudes. But yeah, I'm gonna show you this picture because Simone is hilarious. And so anyway, Simone Sanders, who was willing to tackle people for Joe Biden. Like, there she is. There's the image. You can kind of see it. She's the big one. She's tackling the lady or the guy or whatever. And here's another view of it. Let me see if I can find more of the Simone Sanders tackle. It was really good. Yeah. So there she is. Here's another picture of her. Yeah. Oh, so anyway, so back up, fellas. She's taken. So I know you guys are licking your chops, trying to get at her and slide in her DM, but she's taken. But the point is to say, I know I'm being a jerk right now, but I'm sorry, I can't help it. It's just funny to me. And so Simone Sanders, what was it, Amanda Seal, and a bunch of other people who really told Black people to vote for nothing, who really pushed Black people to to basically throw away our whole agenda just so we could support the Democrats in their quest for power and to use ourselves, to lay ourselves out there to be pimped. Now they're all backpedaling and saying, dang, like we really, we're really mad now because now Biden won't meet with us. Black Lives Matter. They complain that Biden hasn't met with them at all. And it's not a surprise. Like those of us who understand how to negotiate, are not surprised by this at all. Those of us who understand logic, who understand that politics and economics is war, understand that. Those who understand, what leverage means, what power means, we expected that. Like, why would he talk to you now? He wouldn't even talk to you when he needed you. What makes you think he's going to talk to you when he doesn't need you? That just makes no sense. And that really just says, okay, it's fine. There are some people who are a little slow. There are some people who are emotionally broken to the point where they're looking for love in all the wrong places. There are some people who are just going to stay stuck on stupid in terms of how they negotiate. But those people should not be the ones leading the community, right? Now, but that goes into this deeper point. These are not people that you selected. You did not select these people to lead the community. The people that selected these individuals are the people who don't want you to have any power at all. So I think it takes time. It's important for us to take the time to make sure we're selecting our leaders based on people that are putting Black people first. That's why when we come to this platform, first thing I say is, are you B1? B1, do you put Black people first? Is that your top priority? Because then what that does is that allows us to create a higher dimensional vibration that we can operate on that allows us to leave behind the lower level issues, right? We can now get to the point of playing powernomics because we're not playing strugglenomics. We can now fly like eagles because we're no longer crabs in a barrel. I'm no longer going to have an issue with you because maybe one of us is rich and the other one's poor. I'm not going to have an issue with you because one of us went to college and the other one didn't. I'm not going to have an issue because you're a feminist and I'm not. I'm not going to have an issue with you because you're LGBT and I'm not. Because we're all Black first. So if we're Black first, meaning that the well-being and the development of the Black community is our number one priority, then all those other things become second and third level, third tier, right? It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Psychologists know what this is. Maslow's hierarchy of needs basically says that you can't operate at the highest frequency in your life. You can't reach self-actualization until you've dealt with those lower level issues. So I want us to kind of get to this point where we kind of say, okay, we hear all this other stuff, these other lower level issues. We hear about the immigration debate. We ain't gonna have that debate today. We hear about the debate about transgender. We're not gonna have that debate. We hear about the debate about other, environmentalism and all this other. We're not gonna have that debate. We're gonna get back to this key idea. Let's talk about the money, because what Powernomics and Dr. Claude Anderson and a lot of other experts have explained to you is that when you control the economics, you can control everything. The economics is the one thing that changes everything. When you got the money, you make the rules. There's an old saying that says, "He who has the gold makes the rules." You don't make any rules because they've got the gold. So if you get the gold, then you can make the rules. And what are the rules in our society? Well, that's the politics. That's the bills and the police reform and all these are the rules, right? So he who has the gold makes the rules. So everybody, let's do another word for today, gold. Everybody type gold in the chat. We want the gold. We don't want the civil rights. We want the silver rights, right? So type gold into the chat to let me know what you're talking about, to let me know that you know what I'm talking about. Hit the thumbs up button, by the way. Please hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button. Let's keep going. So it says in the 1930s and 40s, Black Americans also continued to be denied opportunities to build wealth under federal programs that benefited white families and communities. Under the GI Bill, for example, mortgage and school tuition benefits extended to Black soldiers were devalued due to state-endorsed and enforced segregation, according to law professor Adrian Davis In a pro-reparations human rights brief published in 2000, quote, there were far fewer places they could attend school or purchase housing. The schools were able to attend. The schools they were able to attend and they were able to buy were less, or houses they were able to buy were less valuable because they were Black institutions and Black neighborhoods, respectively, in an economy that valued whiteness. Excluding domestic and farm workers from Social Security legislation effectively shut out 60% of Black people across the U.S. and 65% of Southern states who worked in these occupations. Now, here's the thing. When you talk about an economy evaluating whiteness, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tiny economics lesson real quick. That's something I want you to process for a minute. You know, you are discriminated against in an economy that values whiteness. There's no question about it. We know that white supremacy is real and white privilege and all that stuff, very, very real. But one of the things you must understand about economies is that multiple economies exist all throughout the world. You don't have to be in that economy. Like if I'm playing a game with you and it's basketball and you're taller than me and you always block my shots and you score all the points, I don't really have to be playing basketball. I don't really have to play on your court, right? We could be playing football. If I'm stockier and bigger than you, maybe suddenly if we're playing football, if we're playing a different game, then suddenly the advantage shifts over to me. But if I don't understand where the game comes from, then I can't understand how to best position myself to be able to win. The people that win the game are typically the people who create the game and who control the game, because they set the game up so that it leans in favor of whatever advantage they have. So an economy built by white people is naturally going to favor whiteness. An institution that is built by white people is going to favor whiteness. A media outlet that was built by white people, like Viacom, which owns BET, is going to favor whiteness. Why would you build something? Why would you build anything that doesn't favor you and the people who are like you? Right? That would be kind of stupid, right? So the thing is that when you talk about economies, you can create economies, right? An economy is nothing more than a network. That's all it is. Cryptocurrency. Think about this. Trillions of dollars have been created in the crypto markets just due to networking effects. The crypto specialists and the technologists got together and created a currency. They created Bitcoin out of thin air. The government didn't tell them to do it. They didn't get permission from the banks to do it. They didn't get permission from anybody. They created a currency and had enough people that believed in that currency that currency is now worth trillions and trillions of dollars. What is the total market value of Bitcoin, by the way? Let me look this up. Let me see. Let me actually do a little research right quick. All right, so let's see. The value, the market, hit the thumbs up button. Please hit the thumbs up button. We're going deep here, people. Like I just felt that God told me to do it, so we have to do it. The market cap of Bitcoin is $926 billion. Is Bitcoin the most valuable currency or cryptocurrency in the world? I think it's way up there. It's way up there. I thought it was over $1 trillion. But anyway, so it's a $1 trillion economy that was created out of thin air. So the same way that Bitcoin and crypto enthusiasts can create a $1 trillion economy on their own, Black people can also create a $1 trillion economy of their own. The same way that that technological capability is valued in the crypto space, well, you can be in a space where Blackness is valued in the Black space, right? So this idea that somehow you are just, unconditionally and undeniably discriminated against at all times and always oppressed, no matter where you go in the universe, is false. You are not oppressed everywhere. Because it's raining in your neighborhood, that does not mean it's raining all across the United States. You just ain't never left your motherfucking block. Okay, that's what it is. You haven't left your block, so you think it's raining everywhere because it's raining on your block. But it doesn't rain everywhere. So this economy that we live in that favors whiteness, that's not the same. For example, if I were to go to China, there's a whole Chinese economy that favors being yellow, right? If you go to Africa, there's a whole African economy that favors Blackness, right? Except for the fact that you got the colonialism in there, right? So which is a whole nother conversation. But the point is that when you understand economics, you understand that the way you view oppression, the way you're taught to view it, as if no matter where you go, no matter what you do, the white man's gonna be standing over you with a baseball bat, ready to beat you down every time you try to build anything. That's just simply not true. That is simply not true. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. There's my Twitter. Please follow me on Twitter. I need more smart Black people following me. I'm tired of stupid people. So we're over 100,000 on Twitter. I'd like to have 1 billion. So we're almost there. We're only 999 million away. So let's keep going. All right. So I'm reading this article on NBC News about reparations, and it also says excluding domestic and farm workers from Social Security legislation effectively shut out 60% of Black people across the U.S. Blah, blah, blah. According to Brookings Institute, experts argue that such omissions from federal policy have not been fully corrected and have been magnified by widening health, education, employment, and housing disparities, as well as a basic lack of access to capital. Collectively, these historical and current disadvantages have led reparations proponents to argue that while slavery is where denials of wealth and equal rights began, the cumulative effects of both slavery and systematic federal denials of opportunity that follow continue to impact the descendants of enslaved people in the present, for sure. Experts disagree on what reparations should look like. And that's where I want to kind of throw my 2 cents in. I'm not a guy that's going to be invited to give congressional testimony, nor would I want to be, right? So if you're thinking about inviting me to do testimony on Capitol Hill, just don't call me, please. I ain't got time. I want to talk to Black people. I don't want to talk to stupid people, on Capitol Hill. I don't like politicians. I'd rather consult with someone and let them go do it. I got better things to do, like raising my children. But still, let me throw in my 2 cents for those of you that are interested in this debate, that would like to understand a way to view reparations and how that might make sense and how that might achieve the goal. So what I'll start with is they tend to measure quality of life in 3 key areas of health, wealth, and relationships. Those are 3 key areas that tend to shape the majority of your quality of life. So for example, if I see a friend I haven't talked to in a year and I say, hey man, how you doing? If he had a major surgery or if he's dying or something, he'll say, yeah, man, I'm not doing well, but I got a surgery and I think I'm doing better, right? That's health, right? And then if he got a new job, somewhere else making more money, he'll say, yeah, man, I got a new job at the factory and I moved to Maryland because it's a great opportunity, right? So that's wealth, right? And if he just met a new woman that he's dating or he's about to get married, he'll be like, yeah, man, we're about to get married. And I met a girl that I really like. And I'll be like, oh, congratulations, man. That's great. So that's relationships, right? So health, wealth, and relationships tend to determine your quality of life, right? If your health is bad and your money ain't right and your girl's getting on your nerves, then you're going to have a pretty low quality life, right? So I would argue this, that one simple framework in order to kind of think about how we might process reparations might be to start with health, wealth, and relationships. If we want Black people to be doing better, if we want to solve problems in terms of making people's lives better, we can start with those 3 key areas. So let's start with health. Well, with health, you have, at the very least, you have mental and physical health. Those are a couple major health areas, right? So a lot of Black folks suffer that post-traumatic slave disorder. We have a lot of psychological damage that's come from things like mass incarceration back when Joe Biden and Bill Clinton conspired to lock up over 100,000 Black men back in the 1990s. We have a lot of a lot of mental health problems, right? Little children growing up, going through all kinds of hell because daddy ain't in the house, or the neighborhood's got, gunfire and they got PTSD and all that, right? So that means, like, mentally, right, we need therapy. We need armies of therapists that are being compensated on a very high level to help repair some of that damage that's been done from all the trauma that so many Black people have experienced. Give me a yes or no if you feel, as a Black person, that you've been traumatized. Give me a yes or no. I want to see how many of you in this room will go ahead and confess out loud that you are a victim of trauma, PTSD. Maybe you grew up with really uncomfortable poverty. Maybe you saw somebody get killed when you were young. I raised both hands because my biological father was never there. He wasn't around when I was a baby. He went to prison for drugs. My stepfather, who raised me, went to Vietnam. He was a very mean man. I struggled with abuse because of that, but he was a wonderful guy. I loved him to death, but he wasn't perfect, and he'll admit that. Just in terms, saw my best friend get shot in the head in front of his daughter when I was 25 years old. Still love her, still talk to her. I talked to her the other day because I look out for her, because that's what my friend would want. His name was Greg Wilkins, Louisville, Kentucky, 1996. He didn't live too far away from where Breonna Taylor was killed. So a lot of us have this trauma, these things that we just saw, this shit you saw when you were a kid, where you're like, damn, it kind of sucks being Black. Like you really in your mind associate Blackness with pain. Like you just think, God, being Black just means, like literally, it's almost like a rite of passage where when you grow up and you're Black, we just almost get to the point where we compare like horror stories that we experience growing up Black or in not having enough money, just seeing stuff we shouldn't have seen when we were kids, all that, right? So that's where the mental health aspect comes into play. I encourage all of you who are able to do it, which you should be, get some mental health. Like that therapy is necessary because that therapy is part of the reason why you have trouble staying married when you get married. It's the lack of therapy is part of the reason why you have trouble starting businesses with each other and not getting triggered and wanting to kick each other's ass, right? So the therapists need to be employed. We need to start elevating the therapists. We need to start really supporting these people some of them are online. Some of them are giving free advice on Instagram and nobody's paying attention because everybody's rushing to follow the girl who's got the big booty, but you got to also follow the woman who's got the big brain. The booties are beautiful, booties are great, but big brains are even better. So let's start giving love to these people and being very conscious about that so that we can make sure that they know how appreciated they are and we make them part of the reparations plan. Next, you talk about health. Well, one thing I think about with health is this. I hear white people talk all the time about healthcare disparities. We have to fix healthcare disparities for Black people, and that's important. I don't disagree with you. That's sure. Okay. You're right. Y'all don't do what's right in your hospitals. But here's the thing, right? You got to be real cautious about a reparations plan where white people are simply paying other white people to do things for Black people, right? Like if you talk about fixing healthcare disparities, I don't really want you to tell me how you're paying more white doctors to get certain drugs to give to me, right? I'd rather you tell me how you created a, $500 billion fund that Black doctors can go and tap into to build hospitals in Black neighborhoods for Black people that are run by Black people. How many of you, raise your hand if you know of a Jewish hospital in your city? How many of you can think of a Jewish, in Louisville, we have Jewish hospital where I grew up. How many of you have ever seen a hospital that's called Jewish Hospital, right? Give me a yes or no. And so if they can have their own hospitals, well, why can't we? Why can't we have hospitals of our own? No, I don't want like better white people medical care. Like that's the trap. That's the trap they get you to fall into, is the paternalistic trap. Like, we're going to help you escape white supremacy by using white supremacy to help you solve the white supremacy problem. So we're going to escort you out of the building of white supremacy, but we're going to control which direction you walk in. No. That's not how you get freedom. You don't get freedom by just signing up for a better type of slavery. And so like education. Go back to education. Better education for Black people does not mean paying white people more money to educate Black people. That's not better education. That's more white education. That's more bad education. That's doubling down on the intellectual poison. No, the way you give Black people liberated education is you have no strings attached resources that Black educators can tap into to build their own damn schools. Seriously. How many of you know a Black teacher or Black educators who love the hell out of Black children who would love to get together with other Black educators and open up a school tomorrow? How many Black educators do you know? How many of y'all know Black educators, someone that you can think of, who could get together with some other Black educators if there was $20 million available tomorrow for them to borrow against or to receive as a grant or whatever? Again, no strings attached, who could have a school built in a year, right? Seriously. There's so many Black educators out here. And so part of truly repairing and truly acknowledging Black people, truly respecting the Black community means doing something that is actually unthinkable in the white supremacist tradition, which is acknowledging Black people's ability to do for self. See, if you can acknowledge the fact that I have the right and the same freedom that you have to do what I want to do, then that means you're not really my friend. You're not really helping me to get to a better life, or you're not really repairing anything. You're pretending to prepare, right? It's like that documentary I told you guys about called Poverty, Inc., where they actually explain how all these charitable organizations designed to address African poverty actually keep those countries in poverty. They need them to stay in poverty because what they'll do is they'll collect a bunch of money. They'll use the trauma of the poverty to market it, just like they market George Floyd's death, just like they market Trayvon Martin and marketed Tamir Rice's death. They will market the Black trauma and collect a bunch of donations from people who are paying them money, white people paying other white people to go solve a Black problem, because clearly they believe Black people are not capable of solving the problem themselves. Where really, if you really want to solve that problem and you really want to help those people, then you will give them the resources and also give them access to the training they might need in order to do this on their own. The Chinese are very good at this, actually, in African countries. If you go to African countries, the Chinese are everywhere because the Chinese are just industrious like that. Don't get mad at them for it. They're hustlers. That's just what they do. God bless them for that. But what they do is when they go to an African country and they want to sort of claim to elevate the country, but they really want to maintain control. What they'll do is they'll say, we want to build a railroad for you because we really feel like you need a railroad. And they'll be like, yeah, we really do need a railroad. They'll be like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come over with our technology and our equipment and our workers. We're going to import our workers from China. You say, well, we got plenty of labor here in Botswana. No. We have people in Shanghai. We're going to bring in a whole team, and we're going to build you a railroad. Right. And just give us a bunch of land, give us, like in Jamaica, give us a 100-year lease on the land or something like that. And we're going to come in here and we're going to build you a railroad. How about that? Right. And then you say, well, can you show us what you're doing? Can we learn how to maybe build it or maintain it ourselves? No, that's proprietary. We can't tell you how to build the railroad. We can't tell you how to maintain the railroad. But if you need it maintained, just call us and give us more money and we'll come fix it for you. Right? That's how you claim to help people without actually giving them the ability, the keys to true freedom. Right? So that's kind of what they do to Black people, is when you talk about getting more education, you get fooled into looking for white people to educate you better when really you can actually do that yourself. You've got a ton of educators in your community that can educate the hell out of a Black child. My best education did not come from a white man. Don't get me wrong. I learned a lot from learning from white people. I mean, I'm not hating on it or anything like that. But when it came to the things I really needed to benefit my community, I needed to hear from people that were B1. When I met Dr. Claude Anderson, my reaction was just like many of yours. The first time we talked was 2006. And I read his book, Powernomics, a few years later, and it just changed my whole view. I said, oh, this is great. Actually, Black Labor, White Wealth was the first book I read. And that, to me, was the first time in my life that I got a real Black education in terms of understanding exactly what I needed to do as a Black man to benefit my community. When I went to white universities, like I went to University of Kentucky for undergrad, I got my PhD at Ohio State University. It wasn't that the education was bad. It was that the education was designed to achieve a specific goal. A white university is not designed to teach you how to build an independent, strong Black community. A white university is designed to teach you how to go work for white companies to build a better white community. Right. And so effectively, that's why you see so many Black people that go to white universities that end up working for white people, because that's what you're trained to do. You're not told to go back to the hood. You're told to get out of the hood. You're not told to go back to be around Black people. You're told to get away from that. Right. You take pride in being away from that. You take pride in being the first Black this and the first Black that, because that's what you're led to believe. You're led to actually address the alleged premium on whiteness that comes from this white economy by putting a premium on whiteness. Like, think about this, right? So you're confronting the premium. In this article, they mentioned that there was a premium on whiteness in this economy, but yet you're contributing directly to that premium by connecting yourself more deeply to whiteness. You're adding to the networking effects. It's the same way with like cryptocurrency. One of the reasons Dogecoin went up in value is because more people were trying to buy Dogecoin. Right? There's more demand to be in that ecosystem, which pushes up the price. When more people demand to be in the Ethereum ecosystem, that pushed up the price. So when more people demand to be part of the white supremacist economic system, that pushes up the price. That pushes up the value. So you claim to be fighting white supremacy by actually contributing to it. That is not going to work. That does not compute. 2 + 2 is not going to equal 4 in that particular context, right? So I would just say to you that you have to think deeply about this, because white supremacy is a complex system. So to solve that problem, you got to be complex too. You got to be able to think on a higher level. And I don't believe that problem is going to be solved. I don't believe the true reparations problem is going to be solved because I don't think people are really seeing it at the level they need to see it. That's just my 2 cents. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. And one of y'all mentioned something about me doing something on Clubhouse. I think I will at some point. If you want to follow me on Clubhouse, there's my Clubhouse. Just look up Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm also on Twitch, by the way, and that's where I actually do games. I play video games with the brothers and we talk about stocks and stuff while we play. And sometimes we just talk shit. So it's just, having fun. So you can follow me on Twitch also. And I do a commentary on Twitch as well. I like to teach, I like to talk. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button. So let's keep talking about reparations. Let me keep going down in this article. This is a really interesting article in NBC. And it says proposals for reparations programs have also been raised by reparations advocacy groups in recent decades. The National African American Reparations Commission has a 10-point reparations plan that includes a call for a national apology for slavery and subsequent discrimination, a repatriation program that would allow interested people to receive assistance when exercising their right to return to an African nation of their choice, affordable housing and education programs, and the preservation of Black monuments and sacred sites, with the proposals benefiting any person of African descent living in the U.S. I think that's all good. Don't get me wrong. And I definitely am a big fan of connecting with Africa. I think that's a huge amount of untapped potential by African Americans. I really do. I went to Ghana and I had a wonderful time. But I would also say that, when you're talking about a lot of this stuff, a lot of the symbolism, things like that, symbolism matters. But you have to get to the point where you say, as we said earlier, let's talk about the money. We must talk about the money. Where, give me some land, give our business owners some access to capital, right? That's really, really important. All these other things matter. Apologies matter for sure. But let's talk about the money. Other proposals, like the one proposed by Andre Perry and Rashawn Ray for the Brookings Institute, would also specifically provide restitution to descendants with at least one ancestor enslaved in the U.S., coupling direct financial payment with plans for free college tuition, student loan forgiveness, grants for down payments, and housing revitalization, and grants for Black-owned businesses. I like this a lot. I think that's getting closer to the mark. Here's where you got to be careful about free college tuition and free student loan forgiveness. Let me just say something about student loans. I've been a college professor for over almost 30 years now. I've taught at many, many universities, University of Kentucky, Indiana University, Syracuse University, the Ohio State University. I taught in China. I know university systems really well. I think college is cool. We're sending our child to college this year. We got all of our kids are going to go to college. So this is not anti-college. But one thing you must understand about student loans, where you got to be careful, is that student loans are kind of an artificial debt. Student loans are kind of like, it's like if I said, let's say that you really needed an ink pen and you really had to sign an important document and there was no other pen within a 50-mile radius. And I said, you need this pen? And you say, yeah. And I say, okay, well, I'll give you this pen, but you got to pay me $5,000 for this pen. And you say, well, Boyce, I don't have $5,000, but I need that pen. And I say, okay, how about this? Once I give you the pen, I want you to sign another piece of paper that says that you owe me $5,000, right? So you say, okay, fine, whatever, right? And you sign the document, you take the pen, you sign the document. So now you owe me $5,000. And so then you come along and you say, well, Boyce, you owe me money for this other unrelated thing. Like you borrowed money from me 10 years ago and you never paid it back. I need you to pay me back. So I say, okay, well, how much did I borrow from you? And you say, you owe me, $18,000. And I say, okay, well, since you owe me $5,000, we'll just I'll give you loan forgiveness to allow you to not pay me back the $5,000. So now I only owe you $13,000, right? Would that be fair? Would that be fair? Give me a yes or no. Would that be fair? So I told you, you don't have to pay me back the $5,000 you owe me for the ink pen. And we'll just count that against the balance of the $18,000 you owe me. How many of you, would that be fair or not? What would you think? Do you call BS on that? If you think it's BS, put BS in the chat. Or if you think that's cool, type that's cool in the chat. And because if you type that's cool, I'm gonna have to politely correct you and let you know you might have just got played for a sucker. Because the reality is that if you look at it at the surface, sure, somebody can say, okay, that sounds pretty cool. Like, wow, he's giving you $5,000. No, I'm not. I'm not giving you $5,000. Because an ink pen should not cost you $5,000 in the first place. I overcharged you. I exploited you from the jump. So no, you should say, no, that debt is invalid because you coerced me into that debt. like that's not even, you charged me $5,000 for an ink pen. No, ink pens are worth about $1.50, dude. What are you doing? Right. So when they tell you part of your reparations bill, I know they're going to do this. When they run a reparations package, let's say they're going to say it's a $2 trillion deal, and half a trillion or a whole trillion of that is student loan debt forgiveness. Well, that's inflated BS. That is part of what Dr. Claude Anderson writes about when he talks about the doctrine of unequal exchange. The doctrine of unequal exchange basically says that it's basically a safe case where you're getting something of low value and giving away something of high value. So if you give me $5,000 and I gave you an ink pen, that's a bad trade for you. That will create what is called a trade deficit in economics. That is where that's a basketball game where I scored 80 points and you got 4. Like you can't win games like that. You can't, like Michael Jackson said in The Wiz, you can't win, you can't break even, and you can't get out of the game. Well, I'm telling you that your resort in that situation, when you can't win and you can't break even, you better get out of the game. What you do is you get out of the game and say, I'm not going to play that game with you. I'm not even going to play that game with you, where you're going to tell me the student loan forgiveness is somehow the same as you giving me money. That is not the same as you giving me money. No, you are giving me something that is fake because it shouldn't have cost me $250,000 to go to college in the first place. You were jacking me because you had this commodity of limited supply that I felt I needed. In economics, we call that an inelastic commodity. Inelastic commodities are like drugs or things that people really have to have. So what happens is you gain power to manipulate the price. You can jack up the price and make people pay it because they have no other choice. So you made me believe I had to pay this when I know I didn't. I didn't get a chance to hear from people like Boyce or whatever. So I thought I had to go to college and borrow $250,000 to go to school. And now I'm sitting here in so much debt that I'm going to die in debt. No, you should remove that. And that should be almost damn near pro bono. That should just be on GP alone because you own some game in the first place. That's some BS. Right. So ultimately, student loan forgiveness, while it's certainly an important gesture, student loan debt is murdering Black wealth. Like, by the way, that's one of the reasons why Black wealth is going backward, because so many Black people felt the need to go to college, and college is fine. But spending $250,000 for college is something that you only should do if you're absolutely sure that you're going to make plenty of money. Like, you better be making $80,000 or $100,000 in your first job. And most people aren't. And even when they're making that much, it's still hard to pay off $250,000 in debt because you have a mortgage and no house. And you must also ask yourself, why is it that I'm 18 years old and I can get I can get $200,000 in student loans, but I can't even get a damn $25,000 loan to start a business? Like, that's messed up. That's crazy. Right. Well, that's because a student loan really isn't a real loan. It's not real money. They're not giving you money to do whatever you want with no strings attached. They're loaning you money to buy an overpriced product. So it's like going to a store and them saying, well, we're not going to loan you any real money, but we have $18,000 fur coats and we'll give you the coat and allow you to get $18,000 in credit to get an $18,000 fur coat. Well, fur coat shouldn't cost you $18,000. Right. So that's a problem. So I think just addressing those basic things, like, why can I get a $200,000 in student loans, but I can't get $25,000 for a business loan? When starting a business, in many cases, will have a much greater impact on my economic future than going to college. Not that going to college is bad, but I'm telling you, I know a lot of college graduates and I know a lot of business owners. And if I compare the incomes of the business owners to the college grads, ain't no comparison. Ain't no comparison. Okay. So hit the thumbs up button. Please hit the thumbs up, share, subscribe button. And by the way, if anybody wants to support the channel, we do have a Patreon. You can feel free to become a member at intelligentblackpeople.com. There's the URL. And thank you, Jerome Milton, for your donation. Jerome made a donation and I did not acknowledge it at the time because I was in the flow of things. But I want to say thank you, brother. I see you and I appreciate you very, very much. Thank you for your support. So moving on. So what they wrote here is that making the American dream an equitable reality demands the same U.S. government that denied wealth to Blacks restore that deferred wealth through reparations to their descendants. This was written by the Brookings Institution, Andre Perry and Rashawn Ray. I guess there are scholars there. The variety of proposals show that even some supporters of reparations, there's some disagreement about what a full program should look like. Quote, I think we would be doing ourselves a huge disservice if we were just talking about financial compensation alone, says Dryzen Heath, a racial justice researcher with Human Rights Watch. And there's some local governments that are doing some initiatives, and the article's in NBCnews.com if you want to read it. It's titled what slavery reparations from the federal government could look like. Now, let me dig and break down what I think will be an adequate reparations plan. And in order to do this, actually, let me read a little bit from Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth, which, again, when they talk about wanting to do a reparations study in HR 40, that's not necessary because the study's been done. This book is a study on reparations, and he breaks down so many detailed pieces of information. It's on powernomics.com. Powernomics.com is where you can get Dr. Anderson's books. I encourage everybody to go take a look because Dr. Anderson is the real deal. He is today's modern Marcus Garvey, if you will. He's W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois mixed with Marcus Garvey, mixed with Booker T. Washington, mixed with Frederick Douglass. I mean, he's a great man, and I love him, and I think we need to give him his flowers while he's here. Don't just wait until the man's gone to start celebrating him. Y'all need to start celebrating Dr. Claude Anderson right now, right up there with Dr. King, right up there with Martin Luther King, right up there with the Malcolms, right up there with everybody else. Celebrate that man because this man has given you a gift that there's no school in this country that gives you that. Even your HBCUs don't give you that. HBCUs, let's just keep it 100. They're great institutions, but we know who created HBCUs. HBCUs don't invite Dr. Anderson in to speak. Howard University has never wanted a Claude Anderson to speak. And the question becomes, what's dangerous about a man who actually gives real concrete instructions and ideas that put the Black community first? What's dangerous about that? Why is that a problem? What makes him worse than all the white people that you've had come speak at Howard? I don't understand that. And I think that they should be challenged on that to kind of say, like, well, what's going on here? And why will you brag all day about all the Black people you sent to go work for Goldman Sachs, but you don't talk so much about the Black people who are actually in the community building? Somebody like Sharif Abdul Malik, who went to Howard, who has built We Buy Black, one of the most extraordinary and impactful Black economic networks in the history of this country. Like, this man made Black history. He's created millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of transactional commerce that has elevated the conditions of thousands of Black families across this world. And you don't mention him at all, but you'll mention a Negro with a job in a second. I want you to think about that. So they need to be challenged on that. Anybody and I love my HBCU folks. Don't get me wrong, HBCUs are great, but you gotta make them better. You gotta challenge them to go to the next level. So let me read more. 130 years after slavery, American society has become more pluralistic and competitive, but Blacks' marginal conditions remain relatively unchanged. In some respects, they have worsened. The socioeconomic inequalities that existed between whites and Blacks during and shortly after slavery are now structural. For example, on the eve of the Civil War, records indicated that more than 50% of free Blacks were paupers, meaning they were very poor. All free Blacks collectively held less than 0.5% of the nation's wealth, with wealth being defined as a great quantity of money or valuable goods or resources within both the private and public sectors. A century later, in the 1960s, an era considered by many Blacks as a, quote, great decade of progress for Black people, more than 55% of all the Blacks in America were still impoverished and below the poverty line. So right after the Civil War, half of all Black people were dirt poor. 100 years later, half of all Black people were dirt poor. After a decade of tremendous progress for Black people, social progress, the 1960s, right? Civil rights movement, all that. Half of all you had just as many poor Black people then as you had when we were ending slavery. That's a problem. That's because they gave you social integration. I don't really want to socialize with you. I really don't. Let's talk about the money. I don't really need you to be my friend. I don't need you to tell me Black Lives Matter. I don't need you to tell me that you think I'm nice and you think I'm handsome. Or I don't need all that. I don't need your love. I want that money. Give me that paper. Period. Let's talk about the money. Type that in the chat. Talk about the money. All right. So here we go. It says, and Blacks barely held 1% of the nation's wealth. According to the 1990 census, approximately 40% of all Black families are receiving public assistance, and the number is increasing with more than 56% of all Black female-headed households beneath the poverty level. Black unemployment has not significantly improved in comparative terms over the last century. According to Curry, an historian, Black unemployment exceeded 40% in the 1850s. The National Urban League's 1992 State of Black America report differed from the U.S. government figures, indicating that the hidden and true unemployment rate is approximately 28% for Black adults and 55% for Black youth. So the discomfort index. was still high, where they measure your quality of life. Let's see, what else does he say? He also talks about how despite the election of tons and tons of Black politicians, Black people literally did not see any progress in our economic condition. Let me show you. This is something I want you to keep in mind when you hear politicians telling you that the best way to improve the Black community is for everybody to show up and vote. And this is important to address because I know Gabrielle Union did a little skit where she was kind of making fun of the Black conscious community, for the fact that there are some people who question whether or not voting is giving Black people what we really deserve. And I'm not going to debate that one way or the other. I'm just going to sort of provide you some data to kind of help you kind of process this in a more effective way. Hit the thumbs up button while I pull this up. I got to open up my Facebook because I want to share my screen and show you guys a little chart. It's in Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth. I'm going to make sure I give credit where it's due. Dr. Anderson is the one who created this masterpiece. I'm actually working on a book that I'll tell you guys more about later that I want to contribute to the literature in this, and I'll explain it more as time goes on. But this is what Dr. Anderson did, and I just love him for creating this book. So let me show you all a little chart in this book, and this is something I want you to keep in mind when they start telling you that the best way to improve the Black community is for everybody to go and rock the vote and get your booty to the polls and all this other stuff that they tell you. All right, so this chart here, what this shows you is a comparison of Black socioeconomic conditions and the number of Black elected officials. So I don't know if you can see the chart, but I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to dictate some of this to you. If you see in 1964, we had 103 Black elected officials. That was it. At that time, the unemployment rate was 10.8%. Black incarceration rate, Black prison percentage was 33%. Blacks below the poverty line was 34%. Per capita income was about $53,000. Or I guess on an index, I guess it's weighted or maybe in $1990. Look at 1992. Go all the way down to 1992. In 1992, we went from 103 Black elected officials to 8,000. So we were voting like crazy. This is up to the 90s. This doesn't include everything that's happened since then. But we elected 8,000 Black elected officials compared to 103. Unemployment, you would expect unemployment to be improved in the community. No, our unemployment rate is actually higher. It went from 10.8% to 14.6%. Black incarceration rate, are fewer Black people going to prison? Are we filling up the prisons less? No, actually, we were filling up the prisons more. We went from 33% of the prison population to 45%. Blacks below the poverty line. Okay, clearly there's got to be fewer Black people in poverty because we got all these Black elected officials. Everybody's been voting like crazy, right? Well, no, not quite. 1964, 34% of Blacks were below the poverty line. 1992, it's 34.4%, so almost equal. And then per capita income did increase slightly, not very much, but it did increase a little bit. There was no change in wealth. There was no change in the wealth gap, or at least no meaningful change. And so effectively, what this says to you, what this shows really clearly is that voting is not everything. That's not it. That's not the final solution. I'm not saying that I'm going to judge you whether you vote or not. It's a controversial topic, and I think that's fine. I'm a person that believes voting does matter for sure. But you must be voting for something. You must be getting something for your vote. If you're getting nothing for your vote, then I'm not sure if voting really matters other than being a feel-good exercise that makes you just say, hey, look, I did it. I can wear a little button. A lot of people wear this little button to say, I voted. It's like, I'm proud. Like, look at me, I voted. So I think that the question is, are you okay with us taking the next step to say, what did you vote for? Right? Now, if all you can say is, well, I voted because I had to get that son of a bitch out of office, right? Well, that means you played into their hands, because that's how they get you to stop focusing on the main issue, is by distracting you with something that scares you or upsets you, right? By me emotionally triggering you, I then am able to control you and get you to go along and do what I say, because I've injected this anger and this fear inside your spirit that will cause you to pretty much take orders from me, right? Studies show that people who are scared or angry are not thinking logically. So they're going to just follow instructions because they're so nervous about what's going to happen next. Okay. So with that being said, let me finish up here with some more in terms of what I think should be included in a reparations plan. I decided I want to just have this conversation with you because I want to make sure that they do some of this right, and those of you that are in here sort of watching the debate, I want to give you the tools so that when you're debating on social media, maybe you can lean on all this. you can take my ideas. You don't even got to give me credit. I don't care who gets the credit. Seriously, like you could just act like you came up with it on your own, and that's fine. Talk about this, right? Push the issue a little bit further, right? Get away from allowing them to just talk about social integration and social issues and symbolic issues and say, let's talk about the money. Right? What does it mean to talk about the money? Well, remember earlier I said that quality of life is measured typically in three major areas: health, wealth, and relationships. So we talked about health. Health means mental and physical health. So that means, like, if you're talking about dealing with mental health, post-traumatic slave disorder, all the trauma in the Black community, well, that's what all our therapists are there for. We got an army of thousands and thousands of Black therapists. I'm marrying one, and so I know a lot of them who are prepared to, if you deploy them and you give them money, the money that they need, they don't need a lot, they can then go out and help the community. So create a gigantic fund, $500 billion that we can use, that we as a community can deploy to our therapists to go and help the community. Next, you've got physical health. Well, that means ownership of Black-owned hospitals. You got Jewish hospitals all over the country. There should be Black hospitals too, right? We deserve to own our own hospitals with our doctors looking out for our community. Next, you talk about wealth. Well, wealth to me makes, I think about one thing you could do is you could create $1 trillion fund that is available for maybe some grants, but I think even zero interest loans at least available in addition to grants for Black-owned businesses. I know some people say, no, we don't want loans. We want it to all be grants. And I think that's fine. But I know that as a Black business owner, sure, a grant is nice, but I would have just been happy to get a good loan for, low or no interest, where I could go and do like the white boys and go borrow $1 million so I could really do what I wanted to do. A lot of Black business owners are out here bootstrapping. A lot of Black business owners are pissed because they saw $100 million go to Black Lives Matter so they can do their little Marxist LGBT agenda, and they didn't see that money come into the Black community. There are Black business owners out here that are creating jobs that had no funding. They can't even go to the bank. I know Black businesses that are generating millions of dollars a year. They can't even get a loan equivalent to 2 weeks of revenue. I talked to a guy whose company made $3 million last year. He said, I couldn't even get the bank to loan me $700,000. What the fuck is that? What is that? What the hell? What is that? Like, you mean to tell me that even the people that are making millions of dollars a year can't even borrow $700,000? Get out of here. So I think that's some low-hanging fruit. Create a $1 trillion fund, create a committee with people like me on it, where we can, without any strings attached, allow Black businesses to come in and get massive loans to really supersize their businesses and get training to go with that. Right? We've got the Black Business School. You give me $100 million tomorrow, I can deploy Black business schools all across the United States and have Black people looking like the most economically educated group of people on the planet. Like, I know how to do this. I'm doing that from a YouTube channel. I've accomplished more from a YouTube channel than most universities have accomplished with billions of dollars in resources. Imagine if we had that kind of money, what we could do for the community, right? So, and again, I don't even, I'm really I want to take myself out of the conversation, right? Because we found a way to make a way, right? We figured out how to get what we need. We're making it happen. But, I think that this is the kind of thing that ends up frustrating me, because you got models that work. You've got models that are successful at achieving the goal. You've got schools. Marcus Klein from Freedom Home Academy International. I invited him to my wedding, and I love this guy because he was able to build the best educational institution I've ever seen in my life, like with peanuts. Why doesn't he have a $50 million a year budget? If he has the solution, why are we not funding the solution? Well, because it goes back to that fundamental question I asked you before. Are you really trying to solve the problem? Or are you trying to pretend like you're solving the problem? I don't think they're really trying to solve the problem. Because if you're really trying to solve the problem, then you would really aim for the solution. You would find out where the solutions lie, and you would dig deeper into the solution. You would double down on the things that are working and move away from the things that are not working. They're not doing that. They're double downing on the things that are not working and ignoring the things that are. Okay, so this is your fundamental issue, right? So when I think about what we're going to try to do with the Black Business School, I don't have a lot of faith that the government's ever going to see what we can do, right? I mean, a lot of you in here will say, like, give me a yes in the chat if you can confirm that you've probably learned more about economics, at least from me, than you ever learned in college. You probably went to college 4 years and 2 years of graduate school and learned more literally by coming to this platform or taking a class in the Black Business School than you learned from anything else. Give me a yes in the chat. Please say something, because it makes us feel, it makes us happy. Lets us know we're not talking to the air. And we're going to keep building on that, right? We're building, from the community. We're bootstrapping it. We're making it happen. It will be nice, for example, if we got a bunch of celebrities who leveraged all their power, their so-called power and clout they have online, help us get access to another 50 million so we can really blow this thing up. Maybe one day that'll happen. I don't know. I'm not waiting for that. But I definitely am not waiting for the government to be that solution, because I don't think your government's ready. I think white supremacy is too insidious in this country for them to ever really solve the problem of reparations. They don't even want to address it. It's taken them 30 years to even decide to even consider studying whether or not reparations are necessary and how to implement reparations. You understand that? Like, they're not even, they're dragging their feet beyond dragging. They're not even to the point of dragging their feet. Their feet aren't even off the bed yet. So I don't really know how we're going to get to a point where meaningful reparations are paid. I just don't have a lot of faith in that, to be honest with you. But anyway, here's more of what I think would have to happen in the wealth category. I think that free land is important. Remember, go back to the basics. Remember, keep it simple. There's a statement. There's something called Occam's razor. Tell me if you've ever heard about Occam's razor. Occam's razor basically says that the simplest solution is the one that is usually right. Right. So I go back to Occam's razor. I like to keep things simple. And so to me, simplicity means, let's go back to 40 acres and a mule. Let's talk about that. You promised 40 acres and a mule. You didn't deliver. Just come back to that. Maybe not a mule, 40 acres and a car or something. I don't know. Just 40 acres and a horse, 40 acres and a cow, 40 acres and, in a moped. I don't give a shit. Just something. Let's go back to that, right? So land is an important part of that, because land is one of the fundamental building blocks of wealth. Mortgages would also be an avenue for the acquisition of real estate. So to me, if you're pushing for reparations, no Black person anywhere should have to go to a bank no Black person anywhere who has shown the ability to pay rent in an apartment should have any trouble at all getting a loan for a home. If you have been paying $1,500 a month in rent, what in the world makes them think you can't pay a $1,200 a month mortgage? How much damn sense does that make? That makes no damn sense at all. You don't pay 20 years worth of rent. They bought your landlord a house, by the way, right? You add up that rent money over a 20-year period. That's a lot of money, and they're still telling you don't qualify for a mortgage. That's BS. So you need instead of having these social justice kinds of situations, where you've got people monitoring from a social justice standpoint, you need people that are monitoring from an economic justice standpoint, right? Like, so imagine if you had someone like me, not me, I don't want to work for the government, but let's say someone like me who was a czar of economic justice, who basically said every bank in America, as a part of the reparations plan, must approve any mortgage loan of any Black person who has proven that they have the ability to repay that debt, right? That would be massive. That would be huge, because so many of you, how many of you right now, raise your hand, how many of you right now, if you could go borrow $250,000 and make the payments on that $250,000 over a 30-year period. So a payment on $250,000 over a 30-year period at reasonable interest rates, that payment might be, let me think here, I'm trying to do the math in my head. That might be like $1,800 a month, $2,000 a month. How many of y'all could hack that? How many of y'all could find something to do with that $250,000, whether it's buy your first house, get your business off the ground, or whatever? How many of you could find something to do with that money and could make that payment of about $1,800 to $2,000 a month? How many of you can handle that? Give me a yes or no. Give me a yes or no in the chat if you're in that category, right? Millions of people can handle that. Millions of you can handle that. Why isn't that financing made available? Like, you could accomplish a lot just by making capital available to everybody that has a dream, because so many dreams get killed because the dreamer can't get access to the money they need to make it happen. You're denying them access to the financial vehicle. They're not asking you to give them a ride to the destination. They're just asking you to give them access to a car. They'll drive themselves. Just give them access to the car. Right. So anyway, moving on. I think Black people should have our own schools. We should have $1 trillion fund for businesses. There are no strings attached. Mortgages for any Black person who shows the ability to pay. Free land. Give everybody 40 acres or whatever. Go take it from those farmers or whatever you got to do. Just go get our land back. Also, relationships. Remember, I said health, wealth, and relationships. When I think about relationships, I think about family, and I think about our bad relationships with each other, where our trauma causes us to fight and spend a lot of time going back and forth with each other after we're re-triggering each other, and we can't build businesses together, can't build families together, whatever. Well, that's where our army of therapists comes in. And I think that those therapists can help us build better relationships. And again, because I'm a do for selfer also, because I don't have a lot of faith in white people saving us. I just don't believe that's going to happen. I would encourage you, until white folks decide to write a check, I encourage you to still make sure you understand the value of therapy and mental health. If you understand therapy, or if you get connection to the tools of therapy, what that allows you to do is, one, to deal with your own stuff so that you're not constantly triggered and constantly reacting in an overly emotional way that destroys everything of value in your life. That's going to cause you to not be able to set goals and accomplish them. It's going to cause you to not be able to maintain relationships with a partner who can actually help you, right? A good partner, like, fellas, I'm telling you, if you ever want to really succeed, get you like a real quality woman by your side. Like a good quality woman by your side will help you see your blind spots. If you're humble enough to hear it, she will help you she'll add an angle to what you're doing. That is another brain in the room that can kind of make you smarter and better at everything. Like I do stuff, like, for example, I'm not going to say I'm socially awkward, but I'm a mathematician. So I'm kind of a weirdo just by design. And Alicia is a social butterfly. So she's super social and I'm not so social. So people will come over and it creates a special dynamic because they may not like me, but they love her, right? So because they love her, they love us both, right? And so really little things like that can make a big difference for you. Or like ladies, like when you're raising your kids, like having a good man by your side makes it so much easier to raise your kids. Like you have a teammate, you have a partner. You can say, okay, you do that, I'm gonna go take a nap. Or you pick up David from school, and I'll go to Trina's ballet recital, right? And you find a way to work together as a team. And I think that there are a lot of people that don't even know that this is the way it's supposed to be. When I would hear like a single parent really struggling and talking about how hard it is to be a single mom, etc., part of me also wants to remind you, like, that it ain't supposed to really be like that. Like, kids are not easy to raise. It's hard to do. You benefit from a good teammate, right? And so that means that, picking the right relationships is critical, and learning how to do that and learning how to get out of your own way, because the way we choose who to bring into our lives a lot of times comes down to how we were raised and whatever BS we saw when we were growing up. Or, maybe you're attracted to thugs and you don't realize thugs are also the guys that'll come and kill you if they get mad at you. Or maybe you're used to chasing the big butt and a smile, so you chase after every pretty girl and not realizing that there's a difference between that pretty woman and actually a beautiful wife, right? Those are two different types of people. And so I think that the therapy kind of helped you really tap into that, to know why you make decisions and how to make good decisions. And then also the therapy can help you to have good relationships. Because if you can maintain that house and keep each other at bay and stay cool and stay connected and stay on the same page, then you can build empires together. You can build structure. Structure is extremely important, right? And then also you can form business relationships with other people and know how to work through all the disagreements and disputes that are going to arise. There's always going to be a dispute that you have. And if everyone is constantly triggered because everybody went through so much hell growing up that they're scared to death and mad and whatever, pissed off and pissed at my parents for what they did, and my cousin got shot in the hood or whatever. So I'm always triggered very easily. But what that does is that ruins your relationships. And then that person who could have been a great ally for you, who could have been a great teammate for you, is actually now your enemy. So they're either out of your life or they're working to destroy your life. Either way, you're losing when you could have been winning, right? So a lot of times, that word poor, when we say the word poor, stands for passing over opportunities repeatedly. Well, that's what happens. When you are fighting with another Black person, you're missing the opportunity to be friends and to get support from that person, right? Maybe getting support would have came down to having a different gait. Let me give you a real life example. This is real stuff. This is related to all of this, right? So this is the Dr. Boyce Reparations package, right? I don't know what you want to call this, but think about it like this. when I first met Alicia, and I met her in the library at Indiana University. I didn't meet her in the club. I didn't want to date girls I met in the club, right? Because I'm not a clubber, right? Why would I want to go to the club with you? Like, that's a waste of time. I met her in the library, and so years later, we're both college professors. Actually, I think I'm wearing an Indiana University shirt. I don't know. Let me see if I still got my Indiana University shirt on. I didn't realize I had that on. And when I first met her, I saw her, and then she looked so pretty. She's the prettiest thing I'd ever seen. And I walked over, and I just said hi to her. And the first thing she did was she said, hi. And she gave me a nice, pretty smile. And she was really friendly. And we had a great conversation. And so let's say that she was, a traumatized person who was mad at Black men because of something that her uncle did or her ex-boyfriend did or her daddy did or whatever. And she saw me and saw something different. Let's say she saw me as a guy like, oh, Lord, here's another dude up here trying to run game, blah, blah, blah. And then she gave me like a frown or gave me like a snarl, like, what do you want? Like, okay, I don't have time to talk right now. Like, let's say that her gait had been completely different. Well, what would have happened is I would have walked away. I would have said, I'm sorry, I didn't want to disturb you. I just want to say hi. I have a good day. And I would have walked away. Right. And you think about that. Right. So here we are years later, we're getting married this month and we're going to be teammates. Like we already are teammates. We do a lot of stuff together, not just business stuff, but like raising the kids is like it's a full-time job for everybody. Right. And if we had a bad interaction that first time we met each other, like if one of us had somehow been triggered, or if I had been running to, coming up to her was on some BS because I think that, women are trash, or I think that, you got to play them before they play you, or I'm on this weird mindset that some guys have, like you got to pimp these hoes, that type of thinking that comes from hip hop culture, which again is promoted by white supremacist radio stations and all this other stuff, then that would have created a whole different dynamic, which would have led us to go this way instead of coming together. So coming together means that now we've got a joint effort to build some sort of legacy, to build some sort of empire together, some sort of family together. Whereas if we were separate, we'd be off hustling on our own individually. So you can do things on your own. I think somebody said that you can do it on your own individually. Yeah, there are lots of things you can do on your own, no question about it. But remember, there's an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And a lot of our people are exhausted and worn down and sad and depressed and just miserable because you've been doing it all by yourself. And a lot of us don't need to hear, like, you're not supposed to do it by yourself. And if you are a person who has an open gate where you allow that love into your space, you're embracing other people, you're supporting other people, you're creating this sort of positive engagement with others, then next thing you know, you got a clique and a posse. And one thing about economics, I'm going to tell you something about economic strength, and other types of strength, is that you're always better as a group most of the time. Most of the time, you are better when you got people that have your back. You're better when you're in a gang. Like and this is something I try to think about in every aspect of life. Like you guys know on my Twitch channel, and I'll give you guys the URL if you want to come and hang out with us. We play Call of Duty, right? And it's something I just wanted to do. And I know people think it's immature, but I think maturity is kind of overrated. Like so. Anyway, so I play Call of Duty, which is a really awesome video game with a bunch of the brothers. And one thing I say to them when we start playing, we go into this thing. It's called the war zone, and you're going in, and everybody's trying to shoot each other. Basically, it's a really violent game. It's terrible. But what I say to the guys is, I say, stay together, work together, communicate. Let's plan our strategy. Let's talk about what we're going to do before we do it. Because one thing I noticed was, I said, think about this. Whenever you're out there and you're playing, if you're by yourself and you run into a whole group that's organized and structured, you're dead. You can't go. You say, oh God, I ran into a whole team of people. I got to get out of here, right? It's like running into a whole street gang. You can't beat a street gang by yourself. You ain't Bruce Lee. Even Bruce Lee can't beat a whole street gang by himself, right? By himself. So I said, look, so think about that, right? So when you see a group and you're competing against a group, you can't win. Right. So I said, let's be a group. And then when they come after any one of us, they can't win. They're going to fear us the same way that you fear them. And the reason that white supremacy, I'm going to circle this back around, because we talk about the systemic nature of racism in America, which you can learn from Dr. Claude Anderson's book. Go to powernomics.com. Everybody should take a look at his books. Your kids should be reading his books too. he talks about the reason that white folks have gotten such a grip on you, the reason they were able to get together and beat you to death and rob you blind is because they operate as a group. They had groupthink. They made laws and systems that brought them together. A system, even a corporation is a system, which is nothing more technically. If you look up the definition of a corporation, it is a nexus of relationships. This is where that word relationship comes into play. Y'all think I'm just talking about relationships just to be cute. No, relationships are everything. It is everything. So a corporation is nothing more than a nexus of relationships, and those relationships have to be maintained. This is why things like therapy are so important, because they give you tools to maintain relationships, right? And that nexus of relationships gives you a type of power that you, as a collective, that you could never have as an individual. So white supremacy controls you because they stay on code. Right? They maintain that nexus of relationships to make sure they say, look, as much as we might disagree with each other, we all agree on one thing. Black people down, white people up. Right? Like they say, they used to say pimps up, hoes down, right? So you're the hoes and they're the pimps. Right? So I encourage you to use that energy to your advantage, right? Fix the mending of Black relationships, the mending of our ability to work together and to love one another and to find a way to resolve our differences. It's one of the most critical achievements that we will accomplish with our collective in the 21st century. Everybody isn't going to get it. There's a lot of people who will never get on that code, who are on some other stuff, and that's fine. They're right. But some of you understand this, and some of you are listening. And those of you that are listening, I tell you to focus on those things. That's how you can pay yourself reparations. And you won't even really care when the government check comes along, because your family will be doing so well that you're not even going to be worried about that. So that's my thought on the reparations conversation. Y'all know me. I took it in a lot of directions that you may not hear in other places, but I feel like it's important to do that because I don't want them to water it down. They always water it down, and they water it down because they don't respect you, and you allow yourself to be disrespected. They blend you in with all these other groups and start talking about everything from gay rights and everything else. And I don't care about your gay rights. Just stop acting like that's the same as being Black. It's not the same as being Black. So quit that. Stop that. And I just want you to kind of know where the power is. Again, so let's go back to that key point I made in the beginning so we can make sure this conversation goes full circle. Thank you, Surviving the Fray, for your donation and support. I appreciate you very much. Thank you also to Kevin Goodwin, who says, you make my money and my intelligence level up. Good, man. I'm very happy to hear that, brother. I'm very happy to hear that you're doing well. And I'm happy to hear anybody's doing well because of what they get from here. I mean, why would you come here if you weren't benefiting? I want you to benefit. I want you to win from this. But I want to go back. So when you talk about the political debate, I want us to stick with one key point. Talk about the money. LGBT rights, fine, but talk about the money. Gender issues, okay, fine. Talk about the money. Immigration, fine. Talk about the money. Black Lives Matter, fine. Talk about the money, right? If you talk about the money is the one thing that controls everything. He who has the gold makes the rules. So when you talk about changing laws and everything else, you don't change laws just with a vote. You change laws with money, because money buys votes in America. That's how America operates. Okay, so hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done it yet. And also, I want to remind you guys, we have something called the Black Boss Channel, which is a YouTube channel for Black men only. We have brothers that go on there. And if you want to hear the perspectives of Black men, or if you are a Black man and you support the brothers, I hope you'll subscribe to the Black Boss Channel. We have guys like Nathaniel Jordan, the Minister of Wellness, who's on there. I love this guy. He talks about preventative health so that you're not waiting around for a government shot to be healed. You're actually taking preventative actions to minimize all the different ways that Black people die, whether you're talking about heart disease and diabetes, all sorts of stuff. He's very good at that. We also have Jeff Licey Jr., who does sports. We have people that go on there and talk about stocks. There's a lot of stuff that happens on the Black Boss Channel. So feel free to go check it out. And we hope you will support us in the quest to build Black media. So please hit the thumbs up button, share button, subscribe button on your way out. I'm out of here, guys. I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'll keep letting you guys know how the wedding planning goes. And when the wedding's done, I'll run a live stream of the wedding. It's not going to be live. I can't run it live because I want to respect the guests. But after it's done, I'll pop a video up so you guys can take a look if you'd like to join us. So take care, and I love you guys. I'll see you soon. Have a good day. Peace.
Here we are, clan the isms, cataclysm great. Our people out here struggling, trying to make it in this state. Everybody out here doing it, but we the ones who late. Now family, we the ones who gotta delegate. Get that money in the power, never be fake. Stick to cosign for 3. What did he say? Create jobs, support our own. Educate the same and buy back your home. Got 3 degrees, triple 10. 3 PhDs, now we on the CNN. DBTV, let's talk about negligence. Ignorance is bliss, but we can turn it to intelligence. Believe none of what you hear, half of what you see. Let's break it down here on Dr. Boyce TV. Here we are.